When I was in 7th grade, I had an English teacher who was named Mr. Ferguson. Mr. Ferguson was a biker. And every morning when we would be outside of the school waiting to go in, Mr. Ferguson would roar up on his chopper. That's the kind of motorcycle, sit way back and you have big high handlebars. Mr. Ferguson had long hair that was blowing as he roared into the parking lot, leather jacket, big boots. And this guy in 7th grade introduced us to poetry. Very unlikely, I'm sure. You wouldn't expect a biker to open the minds of 7th graders to poetry, but he did, and for me, it's been poetry ever since. So it takes a little while, perhaps, to become accustomed to poetry. Sanskrit Maharaj's poetry is incredible in that he is able to take typical genres and break them down and open them up and to allow all kinds of imagery and all kinds of thought to emerge within language. In a 1993 manuscript that Sanskrit Maharaj wrote when he was on a japa and writing retreat in Castle Gregory, Ireland, a manuscript entitled Forgetting the Audience, he cited a poet, an American poet who's been very dear to him, William Stafford. William Stafford said that the artist cuts a path that is only one person wide. What he means by that is we are all making our paths, whether you're writers or preachers, we are all cutting that path. And I think as for everyone who knows Sanskrit Maharaj, he has been cutting a very particular path within Krishna consciousness since a young aspiring writer, Stephen Guarino, walked into a storefront many, many years ago and met his spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, who encouraged him to write. He has been cutting his own path, and I said to him, we were talking some time ago, he shared with me that his poetry was often not well received, or those books were not purchased as often. And I said to him, it is so often the case that artists, writers are way, way ahead of their time. The poetry that you will find in this book, it was written as part of a series entitled Every Day Just Right. Every Day Just Right was a project that Sanskrit Maharaj began in the fall of 1996. It extended through 49 volumes to the end of 1999. And across those 3 years, this poetry emerges. It comes out of a new moment in Sanskrit Maharaj's writing, which began with a book perhaps you have read called Shak Notes, in which Sanskrit Maharaj begins to experiment with what is known as free writing. When we're in school, our English teachers would teach us that when writing an essay, you need a beginning, you need an opening, you need a body, and you need a conclusion. Free writing takes that kind of structure and it throws it out the window. And Sanskrit Maharaj would write that each page is like a blank field. It's a blank field, and he was waiting to see what might emerge from deep within his heart through his pen and onto that blank field. Free writing is about allowing the Lord within to move you and to unlock things deep, deep within yourself. Free writing has become, since the Shak Notes period, the significant way in which Sanskrit Maharaj expresses himself from the deepest, deepest part of his soul. Every Day Just Right began as a project in which free writing was to be given free rein. I would have to remind you, or maybe you do not realize this, but the wonderful website, SDGlegacy.com, has all of his books, but has all of the Every Day Just Right volumes. A year ago, when I was reading Every Day Just Right, and I realized that there was so much poetry in these volumes, and I thought, maybe Sanskrit Maharaj, my Guru Maharaj, would want to have his poetry gathered together from 20 years ago. So I started transcribing it. And I said to Satsvarup Maharaj, I'm typing your poetry, and I thought maybe you would enjoy having it all together. And he graciously said, yes, oh, please type the poetry. And then somehow, the idea came for a book. Let's publish this poetry. And that began a year ago. And we have been working on this. I've been typing away. And Satsvarup Maharaj has been encouraging me. The idea, part of the kind of the audacious idea that I've had is that this poetry written 20 years ago was 20 years ahead of its time. And it's now relevant here and now today, especially with young people, especially from where I sit as a minister, as a Christian minister. I see so many young people who are searching. I see so many young people now who respond to poetry. And that I've said to Satsvarup Maharaj, there is a potency within these words that can touch people's lives. So the project was to get the poetry out there. When you read this poetry, you are going to find poems that you will see are readily accessible. Poems about Satsvarup Maharaj's time in Puri or in Vrindavan. You are also going to find poetry that may leave you scratching your head and wondering, wow, what is happening here? There are two of the volumes, Blackberries and Free Karti, a very, very powerful moment in Everyday Just Right when Satsvarup Maharaj is writing from his writer's shed in Gaglam in Northern Ireland, and these poems become expansive, huge improvisational works. So you're going to find accessible poems, poems that you can read very comfortably. You're going to find poems that really turn your world upside down. And you're going to wonder, what have I gotten myself into? What I will tell you is that you are going to be drawn in wholly new ways to experience your faith and to find yourselves moved artistically. One of the wonderful things that you will experience, maybe you've experienced this already, is that Satsvarup Maharaj has a very playful side and a wonderful, wonderful sense of humor. In his poetry, this aspect of his personality will come out. And how does he do that? Not only through the themes that he describes, but the ways in which he takes words and jumbles them together and throws them up, the ways in which he challenges our usual forms of grammar. You will see this playful aspect to this writer. It's a beautiful, beautiful part of him that shines through these poems. The themes that perhaps you are familiar with as readers of his books, you will find in these poems. The kind of honesty and confession that is a hallmark of his writing, the kind of honesty that reveals an authenticity that is just shot through with integrity. You will find that in these poems. You will find his ongoing relationship with Srila Prabhupada in these poems. You will find, in a very profound way, a man who is searching and seeking to understand his own place within this broader institution of which he has been a leader, trying to find himself as one who has been drawn to a more quiet, solitary life in his retirement, but one who also sees that writing is a way to move out of solitude and to speak to the world. There is a wonderful poem when Satsvarup Maharaj is in Vrindavan, and he's in room 42, the room at the guest house where he always stays. And there's one day in which he's not feeling well, and he said that he can't go back outside on that day. But he realizes that's okay, because Vrindavan can come into room 42. In this work, Satsvarup Maharaj brings the world into Varahabhava. He brings the world to him. He drinks deeply and shares the world with us. You're going to see the evolution of a man who is seeking to discern the Lord's will for himself as a devotee, as an initiating spiritual master, as a religious leader, and as an artist. So, we've got big plans. One of the ways in which I have been blessed, this whole experience has been tremendous and an incredible gift. One of the ways in which Satsvarup Maharaj has blessed me is to ask me to write individual essays at the beginning of each of the volumes of the poetry, so that to place that particular volume in context, because you have here the poetry without the prose. So I truly hope that the essays that I've written will be helpful. I hope that they will bear witness to the depth of Satsvarup Maharaj's writing, and I hope that you will take these poems and enjoy them. One of the ways in which you can relate to poetry is simply by reading it. As someone who is typing Satsvarup Maharaj's poetry every day, it is at the center of my daily bhajan. You can read poetry. Even if you don't, maybe the symbols, maybe you can't figure it out yet, read it anyways. Read it out loud. I do that every day. I pick a poem and I read it out loud, because there's something when you hear the words, they find a home deeper and deeper within you. So this is volume 1. Volume 2 has been completed and is now being sent to Satsvarup Maharaj's disciple Chaitanya Chandrodaya in Odessa, and that volume will be available at Vyasa Puja this year. We already have big plans for next year, 2020. Volume 3 is going to be available 1 year from today. I'm typing and writing away. So a year from now, Volume 4 will be available Vyasa Puja 2020. So, and then we're looking beyond that to 2021. I've said to Satsvarup Maharaj, I'm pretty brazen. You know, I say, oh, we've got to do this, we've got to do that. So many things to get out there. Every day just right is a treasure. It's a treasure trove. I've said to Satsvarup Maharaj, I'm like an archaeologist who very carefully, have you seen archaeologists at work? They have little tiny brushes and they sweep the dust very, very carefully because they don't want to mess anything up. That's how I am with Every Day Just Right, and I encourage you, that's how you can be too. There's so much to be found in there. So it is a truly incredible gift to be able to collaborate with this man who I wouldn't be here today if it were not for him. I wouldn't be a minister. I don't know what my life would have been like if he didn't encourage me back in 1988 and 1989 when I returned to the church. And he said to me, just go and serve God. Just go and serve God. Do what, do that. And that's where I've been. And here I am today. And I think just in closing, one of the beauties of Satsvarup Maharaj's books is that when you receive a book, he's not simply giving you words and paper on a page, but he's truly giving to you his heart. So when you receive this book, just know that it is going from his heart to all of our hearts. And that is a tremendous blessing. I'll be going on a book tour. I should have mentioned that. Beginning later this summer in the fall, I'm going to be hitting the road with the first volume of poems in the Northeast. So if you have a place where you might want to have a presentation and an opportunity for me to share this poetry, I'm all in, because I believe that this work, 20 years after it was written, that the time is now for this to be put out there, and I'm incredibly passionate about it. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much.